Star Wars in gaming has been a franchise that, just like the cinematic universe, has all but been impressive, right? Controversies, shady practices, only online play, or meaningless single-player experiences, cancelled projects of what it seemed to be actually interesting titles. So hope for a good Star Wars title slowly faded, more and more. Then came Fallen Order to finally break that curse. Our own little Mandalorian. And Fallen Order had a lot riding on its shoulders. It had to break through the barrier in many players' minds that is not just simply another EA Star Wars game. But we gamers, to a fault, don't really care where the game comes from as long as it's good. And Fallen Order does a lot of interesting things and quickly got all of our attention. Single-player only experience, heavily story-driven, actually trying to create meaningful gameplay in its combat and level design. And to achieve this, it smartly picked inspirations and genres of games that excel in certain categories. Sure, it's a story-driven action-adventure game, but it doesn't play like any of its brethren before it. It's suffering from what I'd like to call genre mashing. Particularly and recently, the RPG genre, for an example, has been butchered and torn apart by many games. But it has also brought very interesting mechanics, systems to other games and genres in order for them to have a more meaningful progression path or customization or choice. Or to just sometimes serve as extra clutter and time wasters and being pretty much pointless. But that's a discussion for another time. A genre that has been going through the same sort of synthesis is both the subgenre of Metroidvania, which I mention a lot in my videos, a subgenre of action-adventure games, and the not so clearly defined Souls-like, often found in action RPGs. Fallen Order, and in turn Respawn, used these two subgenres as an inspiration, as a foundation for their game, in ways that don't feel like a blatant copy of a specific title, but they are used in a more unique way to provide more meaningful levels, or world building, or combat, yet retaining the subtle feel of a simple story-driven third-person action game that you can find on the likes of Tomb Raider, or Uncharted, or the old Force Unleashed, or Jedi Knight games. Awesome gems, by the way, you should definitely play them. Let's take the combat. As told by the developers, Fallen Order has taken a clear inspiration by the Souls-like system. And yes, these words get thrown around easily, but what is Souls-like combat exactly? Is it about being difficult, challenging, the need to throw your controller against the wall? Well, yes and no. In the end, this can be subjective, as this is such a new subgenre, if we can even call it that. But the way I like to describe a game that utilizes the Souls-like combat systems and mechanics is a game that designs combat in such a way that every encounter that you face ends up being a series of decisions that will either punish you or the enemy. Get the higher positive ratio of these decisions, and you will win. Fallen Order clearly falls in that category, knowing when to attack and when to defend and how to defend, when to use your stems, when to utilize the bonfire-like system to replenish your resources, but having the counter of respawning enemies, and so on. Decisions, decisions, decisions. Some of these rules may change or mold into something else, like say the defensive side of Fallen Order. Your stamina isn't attached to your attacks or sprints, as most Souls-like games. Instead, only your block, parries, and deflects are. This in turn makes the combat slightly more forgiving on the offensive side of things, as you won't run into the issue of attacking too much and run out of stamina to dodge or block. Coincidentally, this doesn't change the overall paradigm, as the punishment for being too greedy, for attacking too much, and on the wrong moments, a key factor in Souls-like design, can lead to the same outcome. You either get hit or you die. Then we have the fact that we are Jedi. We simply possess a lightsaber and the Force, and well, a cute little bitty one. This in itself will create its own set of rules. A lightsaber should feel like a lightsaber, and Force powers should feel impactful and meaningful, but not to be overused, and Fallen Order deals with both of these in a quite amazing way. Combat is meaningful on both fronts. Each and every attack has its own set of clear animation and use. Enemies die quick to your slashes. Countering blaster shots or parrying attacks at the right moments can be equally deadly, and Force powers can be rather overpowered, like throwing your opponent off the map, but have very limited use. These effects, the effects of a lightsaber, the way a lightsaber should behave and the Force should behave, fit perfectly with the Souls-like game design. Though the most disappointing part of the combat feel is that we don't get dismemberment on troopers, found only to be on the other creatures. But much like the somewhat recent release of Sekiro, Fallen Order is emphasizing the more aggressive side of a Souls-like combat. The game wants you to keep on attacking and not play on the defensive as much, reacting with the highly beneficial and skillfully parries to break the guard of your enemies, dodging the more clearly defined, dangerous attacks, recognizing the patterns, recognizing the weakness, aided by your BD1, are going to be the key to win, just like any Souls-like title. Then we have the difficulty presented. Souls-like often do not offer difficulty levels. It is what it is and deal with it. But here, the game smartly presents difficulty options that are fitting of a Souls-like combat system. Having such an emphasis on parries, the difficulty will interact with it, making the timing of it easier or harder. Enemy aggression is also affected, giving you more or less time to breathe and react to enemy attacks. All of this on top of the typical damage intake a difficulty option usually presents. Respawns are affected differently as well. Sure, dying can make you return to a rune and met with a loss of experience till retrieved, with a nice little touch of respawn end screen instead of you died. Nice one there, respawn. But some of your deaths are easily forgiven by the game, with quick respawns with a slight dent on your HP pool, or even respawning in or close to a scripted event.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
So all these different twists do not change the fact that Fallen Order utilizes the Souls-like combat system, but is not using it as a way to punish you and force you to learn it as much as it's traditionally found in Souls-like. The game is not trying to overly challenge you, even on the higher difficulty settings like Jedi Master. It is not an extreme of, say, Sekiro. It's utilizing this system in order to present meaningful gameplay that has repercussions, that has decisions to make, all on the player, ultimately making it a very engaging experience, even if more accessible comparatively to other games in the genre. It is an experience that I would define more as a Souls-like light, but that is a bit of a mouthful. Level design similarly follows the same principles. Some might call it a Souls-like level design. I find that a little disrespectful for the Metroidvania subgenre that the game evidently based itself upon, just like the Dark Souls series once did. The level design throughout the planets you visit offer the same semi-open-ended exploration with paths and shortcuts that feel ever satisfying to get, but you're also going to find a vast array of secrets and chests, giving you bonuses to HP and your force resource or minimal customization, with optional pathways or even story ones only accessible through later obtained items and powers. All of this is a classic representation of a Metroidvania-like design, and a great choice one at that for Fallen Order, as this form of level design, much like the Souls-like combat system, presents a lot of choice and decision-making to the player, benefiting the game greatly. It offers exploration on what pathway you want to take first, backtracking even to areas previously inaccessible or simply not visited yet, and in the end, a great deal of satisfaction when playing through them. But the key word here being the choice to. The levels are also built with an interesting degree of verticality and interconnectedness that, yes, did reminded me a lot of the original Dark Souls, seeing places in the distance that I'm sure I'll visit in the future, or that I'll be able to once I acquire the right power or item. But having that together with platforming parkour that Cal is able to perform gives you a great degree of freedom when exploring or traversing the levels, making it fun to reach certain parts of the set levels. Now, reaching areas through the simplistic platforming and through Cal's force powers sometimes isn't enough to progress further or for certain secrets. At times, the game challenges you with puzzles, forcing you to use your brain a little bit more outside of the constant combat-based decisions. And sure, you might feel a little bit too much like a Star Wars Tomb Raider, as that's what you're literally doing the majority of the game, but they present a small yet simple twists to keep you interested. How many of you wondered about how to cross the electrified waters in Zephos before realizing you simply had to cut the electrical cable? So simple, so in your face, yet overthinking it will cause you to get nowhere, and that's in essence most of the puzzles found within the game, almost mocking you. The waterfall with the burning of the roots was another one. Simply carry the damn candle thing. Easy. Overall, it's a little bit unfortunate that the game wasn't capable of keeping with that same level design quality throughout. The levels do indeed feel like proper levels of a game. There's portions where you have amazing exploration and a great deal of secrets, and you don't even know where you should turn to first, while other levels, especially towards the later half of the game, it starts to become awfully linear, almost rushed. Could it be that the game was supposed to be even longer and have a more intricacy in the later levels as much as its earlier levels, but time was cut short? Food for thought. With that said, there's yet one aspect of the game that perfectly blends with its Metroidvania-like progression: the story.
Raka is secure. We move out from Magito shortly.
Yes!
You must...
Master, are you okay?
Something is...
No! No!
Metroidvania games often present this progression where you obtain powers or items in order to access parts of the level and overall get more powerful. Fallen Order does that exactly as I said, but also blends it perfectly with the story of Cal, our Padawan Jedi, that periodically learns about his past teachings with his master, slowly regaining his Jedi abilities of double jumping or force pull, reaching areas that previously were deemed impossible. Ultimately, when it comes to the story, Fallen Order is about the self-discovery of Cal as a Jedi, his growth on what it means to be one. It is a Star Wars story to heart, with amazing and well-acted cutscenes, with focus on the amazing cast of characters, and just look at him. Look, he's so cute. He's so cute. Okay, in all seriousness, the story of Fallen Order can be awfully seen as pointless. The goal that we so chased after is destroyed in the end, the Holocron, but Star Wars never was about the endgame. It's always been about the journey. And the journey is where Fallen Order shines. Characters here are not one-dimensional, but layered. They are flawed. They make wrong decisions. They learn. They adapt. They grow. And though I would like to see Cal face the temptations of the dark side a little bit further, the remaining cast was perfect. From Seer, to Grease, to BD1, to the Night Sister, to Trilla. We constantly learning and caring about these characters as each and every chapter and cutscene unfolds. We want to spend more time with them to see where it will all lead. They make realistic decisions that we might hate them for it, like Seer, but we have to realize there are a lot of grays and not just blacks and whites, just like Cal did. And that's where the story ends up falling into. Our goal of using the Holocron to essentially breed Jedi to form a new order is no more noble than the Sith or the Empire goals in forcibly turning Force users into Inquisitors. There are many interesting discussions and questions that the game presents for the Star Wars universe, and it can be awfully deep and complex at times, and in the end of it all, Cal makes the right choice, not just out of nowhere, but from what he learned in his journey, even if Luke Skywalker's name floated in one of those stars. It's just a little bit disappointing when the game started to feel like it was ramping up to new heights. It finishes, making you crave for more, but in a good way. And regarding the ending, we also need to discuss that part of the ending. None of us realistically expected Vader to appear, especially one voice acted. But what a welcome surprise it was.
You have failed me, Inquisitor.
Avenge us!
The feeling of worthlessness, of powerlessness as Cal against Vader was simply perfect. Just as we were made a Jedi Knight, just as we had the power to defeat Trilla, just as we thought we were the baddest Jedi in the galaxy, we are thrown around as a wet noodle against a Sith Lord. And just like the end sequence of Rogue One, this end sequence sends chills down your spine and, well, made us love Vader once more. And let's be honest, BD1 for MVP, there wouldn't be a game without him. Think about it. The Fallen Order is not a perfect game by any means, but is one hell of a Star Wars title, one that very hopefully returns with a sequel, where we can see a more matured Cal and overall game, and while keep up with the great business practices. That would be pretty cool too.